It's Monday, which means Mock Draft Monday here on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed, by the way, if you want more of these. But today, this will not be your typical mock draft. As I'm sure you can already tell by the title and thumbnail, this is the Chaos Mock Draft. And how do we determine Chaos? That's with the Wheel of Chaos. And we have some really chaotic things on here. Apologies for that. But we have Reach, Consensus, Large Reach, Trade, Offense, Defense, My Choice, Consensus, SEC, non-SEC. You'll see the entire thing as we go through this. I will say, I will respin if it makes absolutely no sense. Like, I'm not going to have a defensive back going at number 1 overall, for example. I will still probably have it be a quarterback, but maybe it's not Caleb Williams. We have My Choices on here as well, but if things totally make no sense, I will respin it. If I can rationalize it at all, I'm going to do it. But we will start this draft and spin this wheel at number 1 overall. It is going to be Caleb Williams, and let's see how we can get there. Well, consensus to start. That's a pretty good start. Caleb Williams at number 1. I would have respun if it was offensive or defensive line. But again, if it doesn't make sense, we'll have to. But even in a chaos mock draft, Caleb Williams goes at number 1 overall. The Bears finally trade Justin Fields. The Bears fans that was saying, oh, he's him with the 1 for Justin Fields. I'm like, it makes me want to throw up. Caleb Williams goes at number 1 overall. And we get to the Commanders at number 2. And I'll tell you, the real NFL draft might be even more chaotic than whatever this comes to be, because J.J. McCarthy is generating buzz at number 2 overall now. I would urge you guys not to believe everything you hear during draft season. A lot of smoke screens. J.J. McCarthy, I do not believe, will be the number 2 overall pick, but you never know. I kind of think it's just, teams generating hype so that something happens and they can get somebody to trade up, take someone in front of them, or maybe they can trade up for a different player. You never know the motivations of these GMs and coaches and things like that. But at number 2 overall, we get My Choice. And My Choice will continue to be Drake May at number 2 overall. I think it's the most likely. Jaden Daniels is a real possibility. And then I guess maybe you talk about J.J. McCarthy. But again, that would really surprise me. Patriots at number 3 overall, as we're pretty much chalk so far. This is far from a chaos mock draft. But with back-to-back quarterbacks, things could really get interesting as the Patriots will trade out of the number 3 overall pick, something we've discussed on this channel quite a bit, and now we are forced to do so here at number 3. But the question becomes, who is trading up and for which player? Raiders, Giants, Vikings, Broncos all seem like teams that could move up to number 3 overall. And with Jaden Daniels still on the board, I'm going to have the Raiders and Antonio Pierce move up a ton. That's going to be at least 13 and a first-round pick next year. I think it would also probably include a first-round pick in 2026, potentially, if you're going to go all this way. But maybe it wouldn't be. It would be at least 2 first-round picks, probably a second in there somewhere as well. It would probably include a pick swap at one point, maybe 180 or 148, something like that. There'd be a lot of things involved there, but the crux of it would be at least 2 first-round picks. It costs a lot to move up for a quarterback, but Antonio Pierce and the Raiders will be moving to get their guy. Accidentally didn't click number 3 in the first time, but we've corrected that. Raiders on the clock at number 3 overall. And as I mentioned, we're going to do Jaden Daniels here. I think he will probably be one of the first 3 players off the board. The Antonio Pierce connection is obvious back to Arizona State, where Jaden Daniels was, and apparently Antonio Pierce is a big Jaden Daniels guy, and how could you not after his 2023 season? Won the Heisman, electric player, super fun to watch. The Raiders obviously still looking for their quarterback. Getting Gardner Minshew does not inhibit them from drafting a QB. And if you think Jaden Daniels is your future, you'd have no problem moving a couple of first-round picks, maybe even a few, to get it done to move all the way up to number 3. So a trade at number 3 gives the Raiders Jaden Daniels. Super fun start to this mock draft, because we actually got something that does look semi-realistic, but the Cardinals will reach at number 4 overall. So that makes things interesting, because this has been Marvin Harrison Jr. for a while. And what defines a reach? I would say going down the board, of course, to something that you wouldn't ordinarily expect. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is off the table. And Malik Neighbors, I think, might even be off the table here at number 4. So what really comes into play? Well, I'm going to eliminate tackle at number 4 because the Cardinals went out. They got a tackle in Jonah Williams, at least for a year or two. At least for a year. They already have Paris Johnson Jr. So what are my actual options? I'm really considering either Rome Odunze or Dallas Turner at number 4. I think Dallas Turner is really interesting because I think he's probably going to be the first defensive player off the board. The Cardinals really need to improve their pass rush, and obviously they do need to improve their receiving core as well, but they do have another first-round pick. It's a really ultra-stacked receiver class, so they might not end up going receiver at number 4. I think a trade down seems likely at this point, but I am going to stick with receiver. All 3 are still available, but they take the guy they want, which could be Rome Odunze. So it seems like a little bit of a reach, because I think Neighbors and Harrison Jr. are, more in play there at number 4. But if we are forced to reach down the board, Rome Odunze could still be within the realm of possibility. He's right up there with those, top 3 receivers. A really talented player, and shockingly, is the first one off the board. Is it completely out of the question? I wouldn't say completely, even though we certainly wouldn't expect it. But that's why a reach makes things interesting, as we might get back-to-back reaches here in the draft. So, the Chargers forced to reach. That takes them out of Harrison Jr. or Neighbors, or Alt in my opinion. So, I think Talisa Fuaga would be a very interesting selection there at number 5. Could play him at guard, could play him at right tackle. Fits the power run profile that we think the Chargers would be interested in doing. And again, if I am forced to reach here, Talisa Fuaga feels like where we'd want to reach. Number 6 is the New York Giants. I know the mock draft looks insane so far, based on some of the players still available. Give me my choice. How about Marvin Harrison Jr.? Oh, Bengal just rigged it for his Giants. Well, maybe so. Let's see what's available. Non-SEC would work. Non-SEC would work. Okay. Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't play in the SEC. He plays in the Big Ten. So that will end up being my selection here at number 6 overall. Marvin Harrison Jr., welcome to the Giants. And I can tell you what would be really interesting is if the first 4 picks are all QBs, Williams, May, Daniels, McCarthy, and then the Chargers opt to not draft a receiver. And then maybe the Giants could get Marvin Harrison Jr. against all odds of what we'd expect right now. But here's what makes that really interesting. And again, I don't think this would happen. But if the first 4 teams all take QB, all it would take is the Chargers to not draft one player, and then he'd be available to the Giants. So is it likely? No, I don't think so. I think you guys would certainly agree with that. But is there a possibility? I know everyone at this point knows everything that's going to happen. It's actually impossible. Marvin Harrison Jr. would be available at number 6. But it's actually not impossible because these things happen all the time. But it is unlikely. I would certainly agree there. Titans at number 7. What will the Titans do? We'd expect it to be an offensive tackle here. And this actually could be defense. It's going to be very close on the line. And it's offense, which means Joe Alt. Titans get the chalk. Joe Alt headed to Tennessee. They really could use a left tackle, and Joe Alt is a really, really good one. Falcons at number 8. This has been a weird spot for me. It's most often been defense here. Most often been an edge rusher. But this might, in fact, be a large reach for the Atlanta Falcons. So I think that takes us out of Dallas Turner, Malik Neighbors. But I think something that actually makes some sense here would be taking Jared Verse. Seems like we'd have to go a little bit down the board in order to get him. But Verse apparently could be the number 1 edge rusher on the Falcons draft board. Apparently it's not Dallas Turner. Verse offers a big-time power profile, still quite a good athlete, and the Falcons are able to improve their pass rush as Jared Verse is the 8th player drafted here in 2024. At number 9 overall, ooh, could this be another large reach? It is. So we're going to have to do a large reach for Chicago. And what would be in play there? Byron Murphy? I'm not factoring in what a large reach seems to be based on the PFF draft board. I'm basing it off of my opinion about where these players are more likely to go. Byron Murphy, I think, would be in play for a large reach. But I'll tell you who also would be in play there is Jackson Powers-Johnson, and that's ultimately what I'm going to end up doing. Yes, it's crazy, but they are just a center away on the offensive line. I would say the expected range for Jackson Powers-Johnson, who could also even play guard, although not for Chicago, would be the Seahawks. You think maybe the Jags could draft him, the Steelers could at 20. So large reach maybe gets him into the top 10, but if he's your instant starting center of the future, and if you're building around Caleb Williams, you can finalize the offensive line, take a receiver later. It's not the worst thing in the world when you already trade for Keenan Allen for a year. Receiver isn't as pressing, but you'd still, of course, certainly look to draft one, I would say, in this draft, and maybe even at number 9 overall in real life, as Malik Neighbors is sliding down the board. Again, with chaos, you're going to get some chaotic picks. And that's exactly what's happening so far. At number 10, we got the Jets. And are we going to get another large reach? Or do the Jets trade out? The Jets are trading out. And with, receivers on the board, of course, who would be moving up? Does a team jump the Vikings for J.J. McCarthy? Let's do that. Or maybe the Patriots move back up. I think I'm going to have the Broncos jump for J.J. McCarthy, though. I think that seems to make the most sense. Denver on the clock at number 12. It probably wouldn't take a ton to move up to number 10. So for the Broncos, let's add in, maybe a second-round pick next year. And then, of course, you'd get some type of a pick swap in here. But we are going to have the Broncos jump the Vikings for a quarterback. And that will be J.J. McCarthy from Michigan again. Chaos is reigning supreme here so far. We got off to a boring start, admittedly, but things have certainly become crazy in an instant. Vikings on the clock at number 12 probably would be upset that the quarterback that they might have been targeting is now off the board. And it looks like they're going to pivot with a probable defensive lineman. Now, it could be O-line or D-line here, and there are some great offensive linemen still on the board, but it's not going to be a guard here. It's not going to be a center. So, defensive line makes the most sense, and it still could be an edge rusher here. They, of course, lose a lot of talent off the edge, but they also brought in some new guys, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel. So, I think you try to bolster up the interior of your D-line, and Byron Murphy out of Texas seems to make the most sense there. Hook him, of course. But Vikings, of course, already with Byron Murphy Jr., or the second. Now add another Byron Murphy, the second. Byron Murphy, really, really explosive interior defensive lineman. Plays the leverage game as well as anybody, and has developed into being a really nice pass rusher, but is an amazing athlete, and the Vikings grab him at number 11. Jets here at 12 after a very slight trade down. And the Jets will be drafting, let's see. Looks like it's going to be my choice. Well, that choice will be Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors still on the board. He's fallen here to 12. Teams prioritizing other things. And the Jets get an absolute steal. You bring in Mike Williams, but that doesn't stop you from getting Malik Neighbors. A receiving trio of Neighbors, Mike Williams, and Garrett Wilson is an incredible combo, especially when you consider skill sets. Mike Williams is the big jump ball receiver. He wins down the field. Garrett Wilson, I would say, is a complete wide receiver, and Neighbors is trending in that direction. We'll see, of course, what he looks like in the NFL, but is the big rack threat. You can put him in the slot, feed him the football, and watch him go. That would be really fun in the Jets offense after they've already gone out and upgraded their offensive line. Still could be a tackle here, absolutely, but in a world where Malik Neighbors falls, I think you say, hey, we'll figure out tackle another time. We brought in Tyron Smith, we brought in Morgan Moses. We don't need a tackle so badly at number 12 overall after a trade down when Malik Neighbors is on the board. Patriots on the board at number 13 after a trade down. And where are we going to go here? Another large reach is not on the table. The Patriots are going to trade down again. Very interesting. So who would a team be trading up for? That's what you have to consider. It's not, oh, they trade down, let's see who they'd move down to. It's who would a team be trading up for? Brock Bowers would be very interesting. I think one of the tackles would be very interesting, Olu Fashanu. And yes, it is Fashanu. I thought it was Fashanu for some time as well. I get that we're all kind of on the same board, or same page there, but apparently it is actually Fashanu. So there you go. But Brock Bowers is particularly interesting to me. The Bengals go out and they upgrade right tackle, bringing in Trent Brown. Maybe they move up for Brock Bowers here with the Patriots and try to finish off their offense. I know they brought in Mike Gesicki, but on a one-year deal. That doesn't stop you from getting Brock Bowers. They have plenty of picks in this draft. I think you'd be certainly fine moving some of these if it means you can get Brock Bowers. Maybe number 80, number 97. Again, I'm not going to waste time thinking about the exact details. That's going to bother some of you, but it's just about the fact of them trading up. Of course, we are going to give some value in return to the Patriots, but you never know exactly, what these teams would give up, what would be accepted. The Patriots, of course, no more Bill Belichick, who's the GM there for so long. Maybe the philosophy has changed. So many different variables, but the Patriots do a double trade down, trying to better all of their roster with a ton of picks, and the Bengals move up for Brock Bowers to try and complete their offense. That's fun. Still would have to extend T. Higgins at some point, right? But Brock Bowers at 13 to the Bengals is certainly very interesting, and it keeps the chaos moving as we get to the Saints at number 14. You'd think this is O-line or D-line, but this could be shifted here a lot. Large reach. This keeps popping up a lot. There's only one large reach out of about 20 choices here on the side. And large reach continues to pop up and create chaos. Now, what defines a large reach here? I think it still would be offensive tackle or D-line, but I think as for a large reach, that still seems like it would be possible. I like Amarius Mims here. He's a super athletic monster at right tackle. He's 6'7", 340 with, again, really great athletic tools. If you can develop him, and it didn't work out so great for Trevor Penning, but if you can develop Amarius Mims, you've got a really, really talented player. And he's not actually incredibly raw. He's just a little inexperienced. Has really only started about 8 games at the college football level, but has been dominant in those games. Raw is not really what I would describe him as. I would say that he's just inexperienced, and maybe that contributes to being raw, as they would say. But he is incredibly talented. What stands out for him at that size is the quick feet. He moves like somebody not even close to his size. He's very nimble, but incredibly strong. And I know some people that have him as the number 1 ranked tackle in this class, and the Saints get him at 14. Well, I think that would be a large reach in terms of, perception, but maybe it wouldn't be in terms of talent, as I think we're finally going to get back to something that resembles chalk here at number 15 with consensus. Now, what would consensus be? I think maybe either a corner or a receiver. I totally agree with the needs here for the Colts, because I'm thinking Brian Thomas Jr. or Quinyon Mitchell maybe at 15, and I could totally see the Colts drafting a receiver, but I think the more consensus pick here with Brock Bowers off the board is Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. Colts really need to go out and upgrade a cornerback, and Mitchell is a really, really good athlete. I think he would check boxes on Chris Ballard's checklist, and he's also an incredible player. Not only is he a great athlete, he's feisty. I guess it goes into athleticism, right? But the explosive downhill trigger when he's playing off coverage is incredibly fast, and he has just that tenacity that you look for in a corner. Similarly to what I talk about with Terry and Arnold. Love Quinyon Mitchell, and I think that would be the most consensus pick there at number 15. At number 16, we have the Seattle Seahawks. It's most often been a guard for me here, and it looks like we're going to have back-to-back consensus. Jackson Powers-Johnson's off the board. So what would consensus be here? Well, if Dallas Turner would be there, that's certainly an option. But I think consensus feels more like Troy Fautanu, and you'd move him inside to play guard. I think he can stick at tackle. The arm measurements came in pretty great, 34 inches. But he also could just be awesome at guard. And I think that is, based on the available talent, that is the most consensus pick at that spot. Faetanu is a great player. You lose guards in free agency. Of course, Faetanu could come in and be a replacement right away at left guard. That could be very, very fun. But is a left tackle, but wouldn't be playing left tackle for the Seahawks. We're going to get the first receiver. It makes sense for the team. I love it. Wide receiver to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's Brian Thomas Jr. I think that's awesome. You lose Calvin Ridley in free agency. Yes, you bring in Gabe Davis. It doesn't stop you from getting a receiver. And when you can get a potential wide receiver one, explosive playmaker downfield like Brian Thomas Jr., I think you go out and do that. He's got solid hands. And again, incredible down the field. Scored 17 touchdowns. Led NCAA football in 2023. Great player, and I think a great fit in Jacksonville. Will the Patriots trade down for a third time? We are about to find out. Weirdly on the clock at 18 after picking number 3 overall in the draft, and they will finally make a draft choice, and it's a reach. What would be a reach for the Patriots at number 18? This is so bizarre, and I think I figured it out. Oh, it's crazy. Well, what do they need here? I think, yeah, quarterback, receiver, tackle all makes sense to me. I know what I'm going to do already, which is why I'm hesitant to do it. But the Patriots trade down multiple times, finally get on the board here, and I'm going to have them draft Michael Penix Jr. at number 18. Penix is a really good player. I think a lot of people have, taken my... not even just criticisms of him during the draft cycle. It's just, oh, you're just mad he beat Texas, as if that would have anything to do with it. He just has a serious history of injuries, and that's a problem. He's also a lefty. That can contribute sometimes, but I don't think that matters as much. But the injury history is insane, and he's older. However, he's got a really great arm. No question about that. Didn't throw over the middle too much at Washington. It's a little weird. We see a couple quarterbacks like that in the NFL. You can struggle if you can't throw over the middle because teams will take away the boundary on you. Penix Jr. is a thrower outside the hashes, typically outside the numbers, and we'll see if he can throw over the middle of the field. I wouldn't expect it to be too much of a problem. The arm talent with him is crazy, and maybe the Patriots really, really like him. He cleared, their medical testing with flying colors. No reason for concern. And they just love his potential, and they were waiting for him to be their guy. They trade down multiple times until it finally seems to make sense. The first 4 QBs go off the board, and the Patriots grab him at 18. It doesn't seem as far-fetched as it maybe feels, but it does. Does it not seem within the realm of possibility? I don't know. I'm mixed on it. Rams at 19. After Penix goes 1 pick ahead of them, and that could be a QB team, the Rams decide to go with my choice. And my choice for the Rams, based on the offensive line talent still available, is a no-brainer. I'm going to go Olu Fashanu, the offensive tackle from Penn State. He probably would have been a top 5 pick last year, decides to go back for another year at Penn State. I thought was still very good in 2023. Got better as a run blocker. I still think he's a fantastic pass protector. Again, did struggle a little bit with the power guys. JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer. It's really against Ohio State. I don't really hold that against him too much. Fashanu, I think, is a great prospect. And I think most years would be a top 10 pick. And still could be this year. He goes at number 19. Again, that's a no-brainer. Steelers at 20. It had been Jackson Powers Johnson a lot for me. Amarius Mims a lot. But both of those players are off the board, and the Steelers are about to get weird. Large reach again. And what would a large reach be? Well, Cooper DeJean maybe, but it's not that much of a reach at this point. When you start to talk about a large reach for a team picking at 20, you think about guys that could go in the second round, or most probably will go in the second round. I'm considering TJ Tampa. That's in consideration. Or Ennis Rakestraw. A good press corner that we wouldn't expect to go quite this high in the draft. that, based on their scheme fit, could. I think, is Graham Barton a large reach at this point? I could see him going in the second round. I've had that happen in some mock drafts, but he is most often sneaking in the back end of the first. Is that a large reach at 20? Large reach feels like we got to be crazy, right? I don't think it's a receiver here, but I guess it could be. This is very interesting. What defines a large reach? Zach Frazier to play center? I found it. That's going to be it. Now, Graham Barton I was considering to play center. Zach Frazier would be your plug-and-play starting center. It feels early, right? But he's a really good player, really good prospect. I think the consensus number 2 center prospect in the class, depending on how you feel about Graham Barton moving to center. Frazier's really, really good. I think could be a first-round pick. I've had it to the Cowboys before at 24. And if we're doing a large reach, I do think he'll be a top 40 pick comfortably, right? That's my opinion. It may not happen, but I think he will be a top 40 pick. So a large reach gives him to the Steelers at 20. I mean, I don't want to have large reach on there and then go 5 spots down the board, right? So that ends up being the selection as we get to my choice for the Miami Dolphins. And what would my choice be there? Jerzon Newton is interesting, but Dallas Turner's there. How is he available? They lose Andrew Van Ginkel. Maybe you replace him right away with a player that I don't expect to be here at 21. And that is Dallas Turner from Alabama. I think he's going to be the first defensive player drafted. Will that happen? Maybe, maybe not. I think he could be a top 10 pick. Will that happen? We don't know. But he lasts to number 21 here. And in a world where you can't necessarily rely on the health of Bradley Chubb, you lose Andrew Van Ginkel in free agency. Jalen Phillips is there. But Dallas Turner slides in nicely and gives you at least a designated pass rusher at first and a starter long-term. Really good scheme fit as well. Feels like a no-brainer if he's available there at 21. Eagles at 22. How about a large reach? How about a punter? Do I have kicker on here? Something like that. It's going to be consensus. Well, Cooper DeJean, maybe? Cooper DeJean, I could see. I mean, Terrion Arnold's available. I guess that would be consensus had he, been available in most of these. I would say consensus is probably a cornerback, right? If it's not tackle. J.C. Latham's there. But consensus, I would say, is probably, one of these corners. And I guess I would go Terrion Arnold. Again, consensus gets a little bit tough because the Eagles are not one of those teams that I think has a true consensus of what they're going to do, other than we expect it to be offensive tackle, as Howie Roseman loves to value those guys, and how can you blame him? But they build through the trenches usually, but they really need DB. Terrion Arnold could be the best corner in the draft. He's available at 22. I think most people would say Terrion Arnold, and that's essentially what consensus means in that particular context. Are we going to have another trade? Finally! Another trade, as the Vikings, who have already traded to get 23 from the Texans, are now going to trade out of it. Who is on the board that shouldn't be? I'm looking at J.C. Latham is probably the guy that stands out to me. So who moves up for a tackle? We have a team that wants to jump the Cowboys, maybe? Or maybe the Cowboys just swap picks. We've seen that happen before, and they stop a trade up. That's happened before. I think the Giants and the Jaguars swapped picks to take Deonte Banks last year around this same range. I could see that being a possibility. Who would jump the Cowboys, though? I mean, you'd think maybe the Packers would for an offensive lineman, but Goody just typically does not draft offensive linemen very high in the draft at all. So if Latham is the guy that stands out as the best player available that should not be available, I think maybe a team jumps the Cowboys to take an offensive lineman. And the Ravens are really interesting there. This is not a team that typically moves up. They do a lot of trading down. But also, you lose Morgan Moses. Offensive tackle is a weird position for them right now. And you need to protect Lamar Jackson. So, for the Ravens, I would say now is a good time to move up and try to protect Lamar. And throwing in, a second-round pick, or maybe even a third-round pick, and probably a pick swap, maybe 157 for, let's do, hold on here, let's do 30 and 62, or 30 and 93, plus 113 for 129 and 230. That's going to be the trade. Ravens move up, and J.C. Latham is headed to Baltimore. He's sometimes mocked in the top 10. He's a really, really good prospect. Again, similarly to Amarius Mims, massive human being. 6'6", 6'7", 340 pounds. And not quite the movement skills of an Amarius Mims, in my opinion. But really, really strong. Really long arms. Really tough to beat. Fun in the run game, but can also pass protect. Ravens get an Alabama player. We know historically they love those, even though Ozzie Newsome's not making the picks anymore. It's 3 straight Alabama players as well. Cowboys at 24. How about a kicker? Can I add kicker in here really quick? Not letting me edit anything, so we're going to stick with whatever it is, and it will be an SEC player. Okay, so your Alabamas, your LSUs. We'll talk about some of these guys that are in the SEC. Not Iowa, not Illinois, not Clemson. The best SEC player. Would we count Texas as SEC right now? Because they are in the SEC in 2024, but Adonai Mitchell has never played in the SEC. That's interesting. How do you feel about that? I'm a little bit conflicted there because there has been movement. With the offensive tackles, Oklahoma is now an SEC school, but Tyler Guyton has never played in the SEC. He was at TCU in the Big 12. He was at Oklahoma in the Big 12. Here's what I'm going to do. It's the 2024 NFL Draft. And in 2024, Oklahoma and Texas will play in the SEC. I will count them if that ends up being the pick here. And I'm going to tell you, it will end up being the pick here. I'm going to give the Cowboys Texas receiver Adonai Mitchell, who has played in the SEC before at Georgia. And if he stayed at Texas and didn't declare for the draft, would have played in the SEC at Texas. So Adonai Mitchell, the Cowboys, you cut Michael Gallup, could still use receiver even with Michael Gallup on the team, but now he's not. Adonai Mitchell at 24 feels like a good fit. You could use a receiver. The offensive lineman just flew off the board. You have to take an SEC player, and Adonai Mitchell ends up fitting the bill. Some of you are going to be mad that, Texas, he played in the Big 12, but he also played it in the SEC at Georgia, and Texas is in the SEC now. You're going to have to cry about it. Maybe there's a tissue sale at Target. I'm not sure. Offense for the Packers at 25. Not what we expect, right? Because we think this is probably going to be a defensive back. But this is going to be the rare opportunity for the Packers to take an offensive lineman. You lose David Bakhtiari, but you might not need tackle with Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker. Let's go Graham Barton to be a versatile offensive lineman. Maybe some of the same reasons you love in Elton Jenkins. Graham Barton has versatility across the offensive line, could start at a number of different positions, has experience starting at both center and tackle at Duke. You think he could maybe play guard in a pinch easily, maybe even will be drafted as a guard. And the Packers, who, again, I don't expect to take offensive line in the first because they typically don't. Graham Barton just makes too much sense for them at 25. As we get to the Bucs here at 26, I had to click back to think of the number after 25. That's a rough sign. I think I'm getting, CTE by association, or something. Not SEC. It's like secondhand smoke type of deal. You surround yourself with football long enough, the brain stops working. I don't know. Non-SEC for the Bucs at 26. Leatu Latu. I mean, not a lot of SEC players at the top of the board here. Anyway, there are some. Don't get me wrong. Bucs trade Carlton Davis. I'm thinking Nate Wiggins. Get another DB in the mix. That makes sense to me. Could have been Leatu Latu. Injury stuff might push him out of the first round. We'll see. But he's a great player. Love Leatu Latu, as I've said the entire cycle. I don't know when a team takes a chance on him. as we get a consensus pick at number 27. Who is consensus here for the Cardinals? I would say maybe Laiatu Latu. Get another edge in the mix. I think the Cardinals, again, because they're picking later in the draft here, there is not one consensus thing that happens very often. Because, you know, the draft board changes a ton from picks 1 to 27, right? So, who would be consensus? Yeah, I think I'm going to go Laiatu Latu here. Could definitely upgrade their pass rush. Took a receiver, Roma Dunze at 4. Let's go Laiatu Latu at 27. Maybe Jerzon Newton is consensus. Maybe it was at one point. But things have changed. Like, you could say Guyton, but maybe they don't even take a tackle in the first round anyway now with the addition of Jonah Williams, who's fine. I don't know if he would stop you from taking a developmental tackle like Guyton. As we get to my choice at 28. My choice for the Bills is probably a wide receiver. And that wide receiver, Ladd McConkey's a great player. Keon Coleman has been the pick for me a lot. Roman Wilson's a really good player too. I mean, Xavier Worthy could be very interesting for Buffalo. Somebody tried to correct me on the pronunciation. It's actually not Xavier. It's Xavier Worthy. He says Xavier. I don't know what you want me to do with that information. Should I just pronounce it a different way because you say so? He says Xavier. So Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of Texas, says Xavier, and he knows him. So I don't know whose word to take here. Some commenter says it's never Xavier. Or the people who are close to the situation. I don't know. But I think this will be a receiver. I love Ladd McConkey. He's such a great player. And he's got first-round talent. Is this Ladd McConkey? They lose Gabe Davis. You have Stephon Diggs. You already have your slot guy in Khalil Shakir. So preferably somebody that can play on the outside. But Ladd McConkey can. He's not just a slot player because he's white. He's not like especially big, but he's what, 6 foot, 185. Great route runner. I'm going Ladd McConkey at 28. He's a great player. Really, really good route runner with big, deep speed as well. He can really run. I think he was even 4.3s at the combine. 4.39 maybe. Lions at 29. I accidentally removed my choice. Well, let's add that back. And let's spin again. As we get to the Lions. Lions have had a very interesting free agency. And are we going to get my choice or large reach? It's large reach again. What is a large reach for the Lions at 29? Well, you could still take a corner. For sure. You could take an offensive lineman. I can still see that. You bring in Graham Glasgow, bring him back. You lose Jonah Jackson, but you sign Kevin Zeitler. So guard, maybe not the biggest need, but you might not even have to take a corner here. I am going to go with one of the Robinsons. And do you want the big 290-pound defensive end? Or do you want the juiced-up, twitchy edge rusher at 250? And I don't know, because Josh Pascal and Darius Robinson could play similar roles. I know Pascal's not quite as heavy. Chop Robinson, I'm kind of thinking, well, you have James Houston. So I'm up in the air there. They could use either of those guys would help. You just play them in very different roles, of course. I think I will go Darius Robinson here at 29. I don't even know that that's actually a huge reach. Maybe I'm just going by the big board there. I think that's a real possibility at 29. He's scheme versatile. And of course, could play outside and inside. As I've mentioned, he's somebody that is, 6'5", 285, 290, who can rush off the edge in obvious rundowns. So you're talking about, your third and shorts. He can play defensive end. You wouldn't play him at defensive tackle, and you have DJ Reader anyway. However, on maybe a third and long, you can take a guy like DJ Reader off the field, slide Darius Robinson inside, and then rush James Houston off the edge. Of course, Aiden Hutchinson's always going to be out there. And now you have someone that's twitchy on the inside at 285, 290 for a defensive tackle. And now you got quite a pass rush on third and long. So play outside on rundowns, inside on obvious passing downs. Maybe that I cheated there. Maybe that's not even such a huge reach. Vikings at 30. Again, very strange, but they've traded down multiple times here. No, they haven't. They stuck at 11. They traded down from the pick they traded up for, which is so bizarre. And now they're going to reach at number 30. You can guess what this is going to be. Bo Nix, welcome to the first round. Well, maybe you really like Bo Nix, and he could be a first-round pick, actually. And the Vikings take him at 30. I've had teams moving up into the back end of the first round for him before. Michael Penix off the board. Bo Nix is a good athlete, also old like Penix, but has a good arm as well, can really move. Bo Nix is a player that apparently some teams really, really like. And I know Lance Erline thinks he's one of the better quarterbacks in the draft and could be a top 15 player. So that's interesting. But it gets Bo Nix into the first round here to the Vikings, who could use a quarterback and now don't come out of the draft without a QB. Bo Nix at 30. 49ers at 31. And this has been crazy so far, but I actually don't think too many of these things are absolutely ridiculous. We were taking some liberties in certain spots, but that's what happens in the draft. Would you have expected the Lions draft to go the way it did last year? Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 after a trade down, Jack Campbell at 18. Would you have expected, Christian Gonzalez to fall to the middle of the first round? So many of these things happen that we don't expect. And then, oh man, I guess we didn't have the answers beforehand, right? My choice at 31. I've been corner or offensive line here. Tyler Guyton is available. I'm going to go Tyler Guyton to the 49ers at 31. Oklahoma connection with Trent Williams. Really athletic, another big offensive tackle to play right tackle right now, honestly, for the 49ers if you want to do that. But he's someone who projects to be pretty good long-term, really good athlete. And the last pick of the Chaos Mock Draft is the Chiefs at 32. And the last pick will be consensus. All right, right now it kind of seems to be Xavier Worthy. So that will be the last pick of this mock draft. Cooper DeJean falls out of the first round in this. Johnny Newton. The thing is, though, I could see a lot of these players actually being available in the second round. Do I think Cooper DeJean is a first-round pick? I think he should be. I think he's a great player, but not in this draft. Currently, consensus, I think, is Xavier Worthy. He is the pick at 32, and that is the Chaos Mock Draft done and dusted. A lot of strange things happening, but how unrealistic are these picks? Not that unrealistic. Of course, it gets a little bit weird with the trades and some of the reaches, but welcome to the NFL Draft. That's what happens. That's the mock draft. The only thing I kind of wish I could change is 4, 5, 6. And then 9 feels a little bit weird too. But the rest of it doesn't feel all that bad. 4, 5, 6 looks a little bit weird with a Dunze before Harrison or Neighbors. And then Fuaga before Alt. But I get that's a possibility. But interesting. Just seems a little bit weird with a Dunze before Harrison Jr. Because if you want a different flavor receiver, you want the real explosive run after catch guy, that's Neighbors. If you want, the polished wide receiver 1, that's Harrison Jr. And Odunze's in the same mold, but not quite as good in my opinion. So I just don't see him going ahead of Harrison Jr. Neighbors, maybe, but Odunze, I don't see it. But maybe it happens. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.